Hi, for our last video or for this unit I have the example screen from the different types of chemical compounds. So what we were talking about is we have the matter, and matter breaks up into two different categories. When you break up matter into two different categories, you either have an element or you have a compound. Compounds are made up of two or more elements put together, they're chemically combined together. The only way I can break apart these different compounds is by going through a chemical reaction. For example, if you have something like H2O, which is water, I hope you know that, but water is H2O. If you electrocute water, you're actually going to break it up into hydrogen gas, and it's going to break apart into oxygen gas. So this one thing chemically decomposes into hydrogen and oxygen. Now, if we're just looking at a chemical compound, just in general, we're not doing chemical reactions yet, I'm just looking at this formula, and I want to know how many of each of the different elements are present. So my elements always start with a capital letter first. If there's two letters, it's a lowercase. So I have capital C, lowercase a. It's actually right here next to it on the periodic table. You probably can't read that, but Ca is calcium. Capital N is nitrogen. So this compound is made up of calcium and nitrogen. The next compound that I have here is Al and then 2. Looks like kind of Ai, but it's actually Al. So I have Al2. Al is aluminum. Aluminum is right here on the periodic table. Its name is aluminum. And then nitrogen was here. I forgot to point that out. And then I have in parentheses capital S, capital O. Capital S is sulfur. Capital O is oxygen. So this compound is made up of aluminum, sulfur, and oxygen. This compound down here, I have a capital N, that's nitrogen. I have a capital H, which is hydrogen. I have a capital P, which is phosphorus. And then a capital O, which is oxygen. You probably don't know all of those. You might know some of them from biology or from your past, but that's why we need a periodic table. You would have to find the element symbol, like if you had Ni, and then you'd have to look at it and say, oh, that one's nickel, or Cu is copper, Zn is zinc. So periodic table is going to be very helpful when you're doing these. So you're going to find your different elements on the periodic table. Once you find the elements, we want to know how many are present. The number after it tells you how many are there. So I have a 3 after my Ca. That means that I have 3 calcium. I have a 2 after my N, so that means that I have 2 nitrogen. So the numbers come after it to tell how many are there. Al2, that has nothing to do with the parentheses after it. So that's 2 aluminum. Now with my parentheses, this 3 works like the distributive property in your math classes, where the 3 is going to go to your sulfur. It's also going to go to your oxygen. So right here I have S, and there's no number after it. When there's no number after it, it means the number 1. Chemists are pretty lazy. We don't like to write the number 1 unless we have to. So right now I have 1 sulfur inside of the parentheses. There's a 3 outside. So that means that I have 3 sulfur. 3 times 1 is 3. And then I have 3 times 4 is 12 oxygen. Another way of writing that wouldn't be correct, but just another way of looking at that. We have 2 aluminums, and then I have 3 of these SO4 groups. Actually what that means, like if we had to draw it all out. So I have 2 aluminum, 3 sulfur, 1, 2, 3, because there's 3 of those guys that are in parentheses. And I said I had 12 oxygens because I have 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. So if you need to think about it that way, sometimes that visual helps. Same thing here, I have parentheses with this little first, it's called a polyatomic ion. This one is called ammonium altogether. But that 3 distributes to the nitrogen. So I have 3 nitrogen. I have 12 hydrogen. And then the phosphorus, there's nothing written after it. It has nothing to do with the parentheses, so there's 1 phosphorus. And I have 4 oxygen. So when we're looking at these, just look at the number after it. If there's parentheses there, it's the distributive property.